Hey guys, welcome back to the next part of our series. Today we're going to continue with the revolver trigger and hammer, so let's get to it. Now, let's take a look at the reference, and one of the things that I want you to notice is that the hammer itself is actually a very big piece. It's this thing right here. So when you pull the trigger, the hammer goes back, and then when you release the trigger, or I think when you fully press the trigger, the hammer just goes forward. It hits the bullet with this thing right here, and it just fires, right? So as you can see, it has to pivot. It has to pivot from somewhere. In this case, the pivot point that we have is right about around like here. So the hammer is gonna go down. It's gonna go around this little thing right here. So it's not gonna like this round thing that you see here. It just kind of like continues. It's not gonna like collapse or bounce or collide with this thing. It's just gonna go inside of the gun itself, and then it just releases. So that's important because we need to create eventually for the casing of the gun. We need to create that hole where the hammer is gonna be. So even though on the reference image here inside of ZBrush we only see the forward part like this thing, we do need to make the whole shape. So how are we gonna do the whole shape, you might ask? But that's very easy. We're gonna follow the same technique we did for the handle and for other parts of the gun. So we're gonna be using our very trusty and super awesome knife brush. So I'm gonna create a cube again instead of this element right here. Let's turn off light boolean. We don't need the light boolean right now. Let's select the cube, of course. And we're gonna move the cube roughly to where this thing is gonna be. So let's scale this down. And I would say that's about right. So boom. Now I'm going to Dynamesh so that we have enough resolution for the knife work to work. And this, of course, this is something very important when working with reference. You need to understand that sometimes the reference is going to have a little bit of perspective to it. Like it's very difficult to take a picture of a perfectly flat like side view or front view. So this thing is the curvature that we need, but not necessarily the thickness. So things might be slightly different. So we select the knife brush right here, and we just start going here, Alt, let's try hold the curve with just a couple less edges. There we go. So the cool thing about the knife brush is if you kind of like mess up, you can kind of just like come back later. But what I mean by that is you don't need to like perfectly get the curvature the first time. You can just like go from there. So there we go. So as we mentioned, the knife brush or the thing here is gonna go in. So we're gonna have like a little bit of a hammer here. I would expect the hammer to be like about there. So let's just cut a big shape over here. Let's do something like this. Yeah, that seems about right. Probably like a little bit flatter here. There we go. We need more. I think that's fine. No, we might need a little bit more. And the reason we might need a little bit more like curvature is because this is where the bullets are going to be. So the angle of this thing should hit the bullet right about there. So I would expect to have something like this, right? So now we can go in here. And again, we don't have as much information because we don't have this thing, but we know that this is like pretty straight. And once it's straight, it creates like a curve here. So I'm going to go with like a curve. We actually need to like follow the whole road. So we do a curve here. There we go. So that we eliminate all of that area. And now if we want to keep this or give this a sort of like a sharper look, we can do it. I don't know. Should we? This is one of the issues of not having like the full reference, that it's a little bit difficult to see exactly what we want, but I think that's gonna work fine. So now we do this other side. Let's start from the bottom up. In the bottom you can see it has the whole pivot point. So I'm actually gonna go like here. Let's try it again. Here. And then double tap to create like a sharp angle. And then a smooth angle. There we go. So now we have roughly the shape of the hammer, right? So let's make this thinner, way thinner. Probably something like that. I think that works nice. Yeah, like that. And the fact that we're using this like mechanical tools doesn't mean that we can't use like our traditional like sculpting tools, like the move brush. So if I need to like move a couple of things around here, it should be fairly easy to just adjust a couple of the curvatures here. Like no big deal of doing this as long as we move like the whole edge right here. So let's move all of this. And one way in which we can test out whether or not this thing has like some sort of let's call this like it's making sense, right? Like the curvature and everything's making sense, is you can move the pivot point to where I would expect this thing to pivot from, which would be about there, I would say. And if we start moving this thing down, yeah, that seems to be working fine. So this thing is gonna go like back like this, and then bah, hit the bullet on the front. I might want to move the hammer a little bit though, like this. Let's turn on transparency so that we can see, because I would imagine that the hammer like impacts in a very like flat way. Here's, we might even use the, let's do a like a curved effect here. There we go. And then let's do another curve effect here just to clean the hammer up a little bit. So now when this thing rotates like about there, it probably go like all the way here and then pat, because again we don't want to like crash or collapse with this thing right here. So I think this is a nice compromise for the whole thing. So yeah, that's it. That's pretty much our hammer. Like not much else that we need to do. We can of course bevel this thing, give it a little bit of damage. We're gonna do that at the end. We're gonna add a little bit of wear and tear to the whole thing. But that, I think that looks very nice. As you can see, that's fairly good. So let's turn off this, and yeah, that looks good. It hits the bullet right where it needs to. So we're in a good position here. Now for the trigger itself, for the what's the word, for the other part here, you can see that the trigger also has this sort of like very weird shape. And we can of course do the same traditional like knife cut effect, but I want to show you another way in which you can do it. So give me just 1 second. So for this one, what we're gonna do is I'm actually gonna bring this image right here, because we have this very nice element, and I'm gonna show you another technique that we can use to create this sort of shapes. So I'm gonna go back into ZBrush. Let's go into a what's the word, into a different tool. We're actually not gonna be working on this one right now. Let's go to a plane, polymesh plane. Sorry, polymesh plane. There we go. Let's rotate this sideways. So I'm gonna rotate the plane sideways, 90 degrees. And now, if we use the see-through option, we're gonna be able to, well, of course, see through the whole thing. I'm gonna give it a lot of divisions, not a lot, but just several divisions. And then I'm just gonna mask out with the mask pen the shape of the object. So, hey. Oh yeah, I need to use my Wacom, sorry. So let's do mask pen. Oh, that's weird. Why is it not working? Oh, because this is not polymesh 3D. So make polymesh 3D. There we go. Where's the plane? There we go. So we need to rotate this again, 90 degrees. Actually, we were already rotated, but it's on the other side. So we're gonna go all the way down to display properties, a double, so we can see it on the other side. There we go. Now we should be able to mask this out. So I'm gonna mask this whole thing, and this is a very like useful tool to create hard surface stuff when you have like a perfect profile like what I have here on the reference. So I'm just gonna like create the whole thing right here, and then with Alt, I'm gonna erase part of the mask so that we can polish this element. So there we go. Make sure that the curvature is as nice as possible. So if we need to create like some crazy effects right there, that also works. Clean this up. As nice as you can get the mask to be. That's gonna give you a better result for this technique. So I'm just using my mouse here, or my Wacom tablet, to smooth all of this out. There we go. So now we don't even need this thing anymore. We already have the mask. Make sure you fill in all of the gaps. You don't want any like empty element right here. And we're just gonna press Ctrl W. And what that will do is, as you can see, it will create a polygroup. So I'm gonna select this polygroup and I'm gonna say delete hidden, which remember you can find in geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, and we have this thing right here. So now I wanna clean up the border a little bit. So I'm gonna go here into edge loop, and I'm gonna say, no, it's not edge loop. It's the where is it? Clay polish. Is that the polish one? That kind of helps, but no. I'm gonna go to the mask first, masking, and I'm gonna say mask border. Where is it? Max feature, mask. Okay, mask by feature border. So now you can see that the border has been masked. I'm gonna hit Control click to move this around, and then we're gonna go into geometry, and we're gonna say edge loop, and we're gonna say panel loop. And what that will do, as you can see, it just created a panel loop on the border, cleaning it up and giving me some thickness, which is great, because now if I were to go into scale and scale this up, you're gonna see, well, let's of course get rid of the mask and we scale this up. We're now gonna have thickness to the whole thing. So now my trigger has a little bit of thickness. That's just one way to do it. Now, of course, I'm gonna move this thing to the middle. Let's get rid of dynamic. I'm gonna move this thing to the middle, and I'm gonna say geometry, mirror, and weld, just so that everything has symmetry. So modify topology, mirror, and weld. There we go. So now W, Alt, and click this guy right here, so we go to the exact center, and this should be perfectly centered. Now, the only issue is that the topology here is, I mean, it's clean, it's good, but it's not perfect, right? So we're gonna go to series measure, and we're gonna series mesh. We're gonna say detect edges. Let's bring the poly count or the adaptive size a little bit low, and we're just gonna hit series mesh, and let's see what we get. So, okay, that's better. Not great, but better. Let's do half, and let's do another series mesh. I wanna simplify this a little bit, but I don't want to lose the borders. So I'm gonna say keep creases, series mesh. Let's see if that works. Let's do again, series mesh. There we go. That's looking a little bit better. You can see that we're keeping the creases on the borders here, and we should be able, as you can see here, to get a very nice like topology for the whole thing. It's not perfect there, but you know, we can just dynamesh again. Oh, I don't want to dynamesh. Let's try, no, yeah, let's try dynamesh, but I'm gonna do it with like high poly count. So dynamesh, let's do high resolution polish dynamesh, so I can get a hard element again, and then control knife, and we're just gonna cut a little tip right there. Dynamesh again. Let's cut everything there. That's weird. Let's just control shift. Let's go into select lasso. I'm gonna select this guy and just delete hidden. Dynamesh. There we go. And now we should be able to again go into series measure and series mesh. Let's see if that works. Again, I'm not looking for a super clean topology because eventually this will be dynameshed or retopologized, but I want to have as clean as possible and probably, or hopefully not as like intense. And yeah, there we go. I mean, we have the trigger. So now it's just a matter of going back to our original subtool, this one right here. And I'm going to say subtool, append, and we're going to append, of course, the last one that we were working in, this one right here. We're going to turn on our floor so we can see the image plane. And this one, it's gonna go where the trigger is supposed to be. Oop. I'm gonna switch to my mouse so that I'm a little bit more precise. And there we go. Here's where the triggers were slightly different, so I'm gonna have to like do a little bit of scaling and movement here to make sure they match. Now, this trigger seems to be pressed because there's not a lot of room to press this, so I'm actually gonna bring the trigger like forward. I would say that those 2 points are kind of like the places where this trigger would like pivot from. So I'm gonna keep it there, and yeah, so I would imagine that the trigger would pivot from about there. So when we press it, we get this sort of effect. And that's it. We have our 2 triggers. So we have our hammer and we have our trigger. 2 more parts here inside of our gun, which is slowly becoming complete. We're just missing one of the most important parts. It's gonna take a little bit. It's not gonna be just a single bit. It's probably gonna be like 2 or 3, depending on how fast we advance. But we now need to build this whole section right here, and it is a little bit complicated. But thankfully, we have one of the best tools inside of ZBrush, which is live booleans. There's gonna be a lot of live booleaning in this thing right here. So yeah, hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next video, guys. Bye bye.